Another year, another POCO phone. This time, we have the POCO F6, the non-pro version of the popular flagship killer POCO F series. If you do want to see a POCO F6 Pro review, do let me know in the comment section. But for now, the POCO F6 is here and cheaper than the POCO F5 when it launched. So if you're coming from a POCO F4 or older, this is worth the upgrade, no doubt about that. There, I said it. It's a great value phone that's easy to recommend to anyone. But you're not here for that, you're here to know why you shouldn't buy this phone. And the first one is if you have a POCO F5. Yes, the F6 is better in almost every way, from the chipset to the charging speed and maybe the cameras, but you're not getting significant upgrades that will actually improve your day-to-day use. That said, the F6's biggest upgrade from the F5 is the chipset. The Snapdragon 8s Gen 3 is not a faster version of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. There's still at least a 30% difference in processing, but the real-world performance of the F6 is close to that of a flagship, at the same time being at least 30% faster than the outgoing Snapdragon 7 Plus Gen 2 of the F5. That might be enough reason for you to upgrade, but unless you're playing the most intensive graphics games out right now and you want to squeeze every FPS out of your phone, there's no reason to buy the F6. Even though it's using UFS 4.0 for its storage, the F5 is still fast and snappy without it. I must admit though that I enjoyed using the F6. It's smooth, snappy, and fast with no bugs and no slowdowns whatsoever. It's the same POCO phone you have come to expect from the F series. While the charging rate has improved to 90 watts, requiring only 35 minutes to top up the device, the actual battery life of the F6 may have taken a bit of a hit due to the more powerful chipset. My usage has been all over the place. Having connected to Wi-Fi 24/7 and not playing games most of my days, I typically average 4 to 5 hours of screen time. Now, if you watch a lot of videos, you will get better results such as my 6 to 7 hours of screen time in a day, but there are times wherein you're only going to get below that, especially when you start playing games. As far as gaming though, the only game I'm playing right now on my phone is Warzone Mobile. And yes, I can play everything maxed out without any problems. The game's optimization has improved since launch, although at the expense of lower resolution textures, but FPS-wise, I'm getting at least 60 FPS most of the time with occasional dips 10 minutes into the game. The highest CPU temperature I got was 43 degrees Celsius, about right, not too hot to the touch, but when it comes to build and design, POCO took the boring approach with its extra minimal finish in the back. I do give them points for giving us a titanium color that actually looks better in person, but make no mistake that the frame and as well as the back are made of plastic. And as far as the feel in the hand goes, the F6 feels familiar. It's almost as if I'm also using the F5, but on the flip side, the ingress protection has improved. It's now IP64 instead of 53, meaning it's totally protected against dust and can survive water splashes from all directions. There is no headphone jack anymore, so you're going to miss one of the oldest features for switching, and while you do get to keep the stereo speakers, here's a weird thing. When it comes to calls, the north firing speaker is the one being used for calling. In my experience, I end up using the phone in calls like this. And finally, the F6 is now using an in-display scanner. Speaking of the display, it's the same AMOLED panel with 120Hz refresh rate capable of 68 billion colors and Dolby Vision playback. But now we're looking at a slightly sharper quality thanks to the 1200p resolution, probably the other reason why the battery took a bit of a hit. But in addition to that, the peak HDR brightness is now 2400 nits instead of 1000 nits. To top it all off, this is a Gorilla Glass Victus screen. Those may seem impressive on paper, but again, when it comes to real-world use, it doesn't really change or improve the experience in a meaningful way. But hey, what about the cameras? That's usually the biggest change whenever a new phone is out, right? Well, not really. The POCO F6 switched out the 64-megapixel OmniVision sensor for a 50-megapixel Sony IMX882. A technical upgrade, especially when Sony is at the forefront when it comes to mobile camera sensors, and while it may appear there are 3 cameras in the back, there are only 2. The other is an 8-megapixel ultra-wide, while the third one is just a design aesthetic for the LED flash. Thank God we're done with triple and quadruple camera gimmicks. But starting with the photos, yes, I'm seeing some improvements here. The sharpness or detail quality may not all be that different, but the colors, dynamic range, low light performance, and focus, that's where I feel like the improvements are. The kind of look POCO F6 has is on the contrasty side. It does overdo it at times, like this food shot that appears to be too colorful and bright, but most of the time, there's a bit of added contrast or punch in photos. The dynamic range remains limited, but 95% of the time, it's just the shadow areas. I rarely see this camera blow out highlights, but when it does, it's when you have human subjects. It does struggle in keeping balanced exposure when the subject is backlit, but when you play lighting to your advantage, you're going to get decent looking shots. The videos are pretty much the same story. You can record up to 4K 60 if you're into that, although the ultrawide and selfie are still stuck at 1080p. The ultrawide in particular looks really soft though. I don't see any noticeable difference in the video quality, but if you should know, this is a very mid-range video camera, meaning the quality you get is very good provided there's enough lighting, but drastically falls apart when moving indoors with limited lighting. Aside from the quality, there are a few changes in the camera app as well. These days, I've been manually setting my exposure before taking a shot to minimize the over-brightening of smartphone cameras. Boy, I'm glad to see POCO added exposure value control, making it one-tap accessible so I don't have to go to pro mode anymore. Even in video mode, you get the EV toggle. There's no option, however, in selfie mode, so hopefully POCO adds it. AI is another feature that's been heavily marketed in phones this year. Although POCO already introduced an AI feature a few years ago in the form of changing the look of the sky in photos, this time they are bringing generative fill. So when you go edit a photo, under crop, there's an option called AI expansion. Here, you can adjust the amount of generative fill you want, and for the most part, it works well so long there are no complicated subjects to fill in the corners of a photo. I'm not sure how helpful this is going to be, but at least it's there. But if you're looking for a circle to search, that's not yet here. You will still need to use Google Lens as an alternative. And then in the settings, you'll find active visual perception that gives you two more features. One is to keep the phone unlocked when it detects your presence, which works okay by the way, but second, there are contactless gestures. The idea is to control your phone with non-contact gestures, kind of like LG's Air gestures back in the day, so you should be able to skip a song, swipe up and down, or play and pause music, but in practice, this doesn't work. Even when you have the prompt turned on, signaling the user to do a gesture, nope, the phone refuses to do anything. I did manage to make swipe up work, but regardless of the gesture, the phone would just swipe up as if it's the only action it knows. This is currently limited to 5 apps, including YouTube and Netflix, but then again, it's a useless feature at this point. That's pretty much the POCO F6. It's another flagship-like phone for a not-so-steep price. This is the case every year, and in fact, POCO has done this so many times that it's almost boring at this point. Don't get me wrong, I do like what they offer in the POCO F series, but it has become expected already. You know it's going to bring great performance at a great price point that's hard to beat, but there's really no groundbreaking or exciting feature outside the performance. When are we going to get actually better cameras? Maybe not in the main sensor, but at least make the selfie or ultrawide camera at least a generation better. Where are the partnerships with audio companies for better sounding? I know it's not only the POCO phones of the world, but at least try something new and exciting in this iterative smartphone phase we are in. But that's it for this one. Drop a sub or like if you feel like supporting the channel. And as always, until the next one, stay safe.